Street. I'm going to be reading a letter from James Stockard, who's based at Harvard, and he's addressed this letter regarding the Housing Authority, so this is addressed to Madam City Manager. My name is Jim Stockard. I've been asked by the recently replaced members of the Board of Rochelle Municipal Housing Authority to share my views on the current status of the agency with you. I have considerable experience with public housing and with HUD. I served on the board of the Cambridge Housing Authority for 40 years, as it went from a very troubled agency to one of the most outstanding in the nation. I was the principal investigator for the public housing operating cost study that reworked the funding formula for the public housing authorities under contract to HUD and the U.S. Congress. I served as the Special Master for Federal District Judge Stephen Gray in the case of District of Columbia Department of Public and Assisted Housing. I've consulted with dozens of housing authorities across the country on matters of policy, operations, and capital improvements. I believe very strongly in the public housing program, and I take very seriously the responsibility of board members to guide their agency through good policy making and strong goal setting. For a decade, I directed a program sponsored by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to train PHA commissioners. Let me be clear at the outset that I've not examined the books nor files of the New Rochelle Municipal Housing Authority. I have not visited their offices or properties or interviewed key staff members. So what I have to share with you is of a general nature, based on my long experience with HUD and PHAs across the country. The first thing to say is that in all my years of experience with HUD, I have never witnessed nor heard of their writing to a chief executive officer of a city and suggesting that the board should be removed. Some judges have done this in receivership cases, but this is not, in my experience, a standard HUD strategy. In the case of the Washington, D.C. Housing Authority, the agency was on HUD's Troubled Housing Authority list for 17 years without any such action. Further, there is every indication, even in HUD's own letters, that the authority is making progress under the leadership of this board, moving out of troubled status and into the standard performer category. This is certainly not a condition in which removing the board is a common practice in any endeavor. You should be aware that every housing authority in America struggles with their financing because the U.S. Congress has woefully underfunded both their operating subsidies and their capital improvement budgets for many years. I do not have absolutely current figures, but a couple of years ago, when I did know the numbers in some detail, HUD could provide only 82% of the operating funds that were required by the subsidy formula, because that was all that was appropriated by Congress. Capital improvement funding, PHAs are not allowed to maintain capital reserves or to borrow against their 100% equity, is running somewhat short. If I could finish the paragraph. Is running somewhat short of 10% of certified needs. All of this is to say that a letter alleging many of the things of the HUD missive could be sent to almost any authority in the nation. It appears from the letters I've seen that the board hired financial professionals that were endorsed by the same
Sir, I'm sorry. I
deal with
have to ask you to conclude.
Issues that HUD raised.
Okay. Ma'am? Robin?
Hi, my name is Robin Anderson. I live at 67 President Street. I will keep going where Guy finished. All of this is to say that a letter alleging any of the things in the HUD missive could be sent to almost any authority in the nation. It appears from the letters that I have seen that the board hired financial professionals that were endorsed by this same office of HUD to deal with any of the financial issues that HUD had raised, and that those people let them down. I am aware that this board has begun the process of a dramatic revitalization of one of its developments. Almost every authority in the nation should be thinking in these terms about some or all of their properties. With rare exceptions, any public housing development in America is over 50 years old. In the absence of adequate capital improvement funds over years, many will need massive rehabilitation, if not demolition and reconstruction. Again, I do not know the Peter Bracey development, but I suspect I know many others that are like it. I understand that all allegations that this quest to remove the board is in a reaction to that initiative. If so, it would be the height of irony and maladministration to stop them from moving in this direction. Just when a board is seizing the initiative to turn their agency around and deal with the current conditions of one of their properties, largely caused by the U.S. Congress' failure to adequately fund the agency, HUD pulls the rug out from under the agency. All this sounds very much like a strategy that is motivated by a hidden agenda, and one that is not related to the missive of Public Housing Authority. As to some of the specific allegations, several of them sound very strange to me. Housing authorities have strict deadlines for developing annual budgets, and missing that deadline should result in a letter from HUD. That letter is typically addressed to the chairman of the Board of Commissioners. If there really is no operating budget from fiscal year 2021 on record, then HUD bears a serious responsibility for not notifying the chairman until 18 months after the end of the fiscal year. Further, if there is no budget on file, how is it that HUD can comment on an alleged operating loss? Such a loss could only be calculated by comparing operating costs to the approved budget. If there is no approved budget, how does HUD know there is an operating loss? The alleged inter-program receivables are very likely cash exchanges necessary to temporarily deal with the funding shortfalls identified above. Audit flags are, of course, serious matters with which an authority must deal. But it is the rare public housing authority that does not have some of these, and ones mentioned in the HUD letter are not necessarily serious matters.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Sam Fakuri, 27 Holly Drive. In many ways, the single most important statement in the HUD letter is the acknowledgement that the New Rochelle Municipal Housing Authority has lifted itself out of the troubled category and reached standard performer status under this board. That is a very significant progress and is not, under any conditions that I can imagine, a reason to remove an entire Board of Commissioners. Furthermore, in my conversations with several of the board members, I have formed a very clear impression of serious professionals working hard to create a credible and trustworthy public housing authority. In our discussions, they have even each seemed ready, willing, and able and ethical. HUD's words, these are, in their approach to their roles on the board. And as I noted above, I have spent a good deal of time in my professional life training public housing authority commissioners. I believe I have a good ability to judge the seriousness and skill with which a commissioner approaches this work. And these commissioners are ones I would be pleased to serve with. Many of HUD's assertions are related to the financial workings of the New Rochelle Municipal Housing Authority. Yet, in its response to the board pointed out that they had hired professionals to handle that part of the work, including persons and firms recommended by the city and by HUD. As they correctly point out in their response to HUD, it is the board's responsibility to make policy, not to run the daily activities of the agency. That they hired people who then failed them is a shame, but it is hardly a reason to replace people who are working hard to turn the PHA around. If indeed the reasons behind this very unusual act by HUD and now by your predecessor are about Peter Bracey and the desire for that land to be turned over to some third party for development purposes, then such action in my mind is highly irresponsible. Public housing has a simple mission that is nonetheless difficult to accomplish. It is to create the maximum possible number of quality, affordable homes for people of modest means for the longest possible amount of time. Any effort that does not serve that end is misguided. I hope you will reconsider the actions of your predecessor and reinstate this board and allow them to proceed with their revitalization of the New Rochelle Municipal Housing Authority. At a bare minimum, I would hope you might ask these individuals and the HUD official who wrote this letter to appear in your office as they can have a serious discussion of the issues raised in the HUD letter. The city of New Rochelle deserves that. If I can be of any assistance to you or to the authority in this matter, do not hesitate to write or to call or write. My very best, James O. Stockard, Jr.
Thank you, sir.